If morality is only subjective preference, then there is no principled difference between justice and power. Right becomes whatever can be imposed and maintained. That is not a moral theory, that is a description of domination. Objective morality is possible because nature exists. Reality is not created by opinion. Human beings are a part of that reality. Cause and effect applies to us the same way it applies to everything else. If morality is going to be objective, it has to be grounded in those facts. Nature exists independently of belief. Physical reality has stable properties and predictable consequences. Any claim about how humans should live that contradicts what humans are will fail in practice or require continuous force to preserve it. Human beings are biologically distinct individuals. Each person has a separate body, a separate mind, and the capacity for choice and purposive action. That separateness matters morally because it defines the boundary between persons. It is not metaphorical. If individuals are distinct entities, then treating one person as an instrument for another is not a neutral arrangement, it is a collision between agencies. This is the basis of natural rights. Rights are not granted by institutions, they are implied by the kinds of beings we are. Here is the methodology. A social rule is morally legitimate only if it can be followed without initiating force against peaceful people. Because arrangements that align with human nature are stable through voluntary adherence, arrangements that contradict human nature cannot persist except through coercion. In practical terms, voluntary interaction is self-sustaining, and coercive interaction requires enforcement like threats, punishment, confinement, seizure. So the operational question is, does this policy or action require the initiation of force against a peaceful person in order to achieve compliance? If yes, it is wrong. To apply this precisely, you must also do something that prevents ambiguity. 1. Identify the initiator of force, the party whose plan requires coercion. 2. Identify the receiver of force, the party who is compelled under threat. Many disputes are not genuine moral disagreements. They are misidentifications of who is acting and who is being acted upon. Consent is central in classical liberalism for this exact reason. Consent is the condition under which interaction is not coercive. Example A. Theft. Theft is the seizure of another person's property without consent. It cannot exist without coercion. Its defining feature is overriding the owner's agency. Initiator, the thief. Receiver, the owner. Example B. Slavery. Slavery is sustained only by force. Remove enforcement and it collapses immediately. It treats a person as a means rather than the end in themselves. Initiator, the enslaver. Receiver, the enslaved. Example C. Voluntary trade. Trade is mutually voluntary exchange. It requires no coercion. It persists because both parties judge themselves better off. There is no receiver of force because no force is part of the relationship. Example D. Speech versus censorship. Speech is an exercise of a person's agency. Censorship requires stop or be punished. Initiator, censoring authority. Receiver, the speaker. Some cases appear non-violent because coercion is indirect. The nature test addresses that directly. Example E. Schools denying access to the restroom. In isolation, permission rules sound administrative. The relevant question is structural. Is the person free to exit without penalty? If they ignore the rule, what happens? Is punishment backed by institutional power? If attendance is compelled and exit is meaningfully restricted, the denial of basic bodily needs is not merely withholding a service, it becomes coercion because the individual is being constrained within a system that can punish disobedience. Initiator, the institution enforcing compliance through penalty. Receiver, the student compelled to comply under threat. The point is not emotional, it is logical. When an institution controls exit and imposes penalties, rules are not neutral, they are mechanisms of compulsion. These are the ones that people argue about indefinitely, usually because the coercion is disguised as policy. Example F1. It's not force, it's just fine. A fine is a conditional threat. Pay or escalation follows. The threat is what makes it coercive. Initiator, the authority demanding payment. Receiver, the person compelled to pay. Example F2. They can just leave. This is only valid if leaving is actually feasible without imposed penalties. If the choice is comply or be punished, then it's not voluntary. A constrained exit is not consent. Example F3. Refusal versus coercion. A private individual declining to trade or associate is not initiating force. It is simply non-cooperation. If an institution compels participation, restricts exit, and then denies necessities, the denial operates as coercion because the individual cannot practically avoid the system's power. Same word, deny, different moral structure. The nature test forces you to analyze the structure. A major objection comes from a category error. People treat emotional discomfort as if it was the same thing as coercion. The claim is usually framed something like this: if I feel harmed, offended, unsafe, or distressed, then my liberty is being intruded upon, and I have a right to make it not happen. But liberty in the natural right sense is not the guarantee of comfort, it's the protection of agency. Feeling negatively does not by itself identify a rights violation, because feelings don't tell you who initiated force or whether force was initiated at all. A rights claim has to point to something objective, an invasion of body, property, or voluntary agreement, or a threat backed by enforcement. This is where the initiator-receiver distinction matters again. If someone speaks and you dislike it, the speech may affect your mood, but does not compel your body or seize your property. There is no initiation of force. If you respond by censoring them through punishment, you have now introduced coercion. The initiator becomes the censor, and the receiver becomes the speaker. A right to never experience negative emotion from other people's peaceful actions cannot exist without contradiction, because enforcing it requires initiating force against peaceful people. It turns personal discomfort into a warrant to control others. So the methodology stays the same: identify the force. If there's no initiation of force, there is no rights violation, even if the experience is unpleasant. This confuses is with ought. Natural rights does not claim that everything that occurs in nature is morally good. Disease is natural. Predation is natural. That does not generate a moral permission. The argument is, given the kind of beings we are, rational agents capable of cooperation, the only social rules that can be universalized without contradiction are those that prohibit initiating force against peaceful persons. If you want stable cooperation, trust, production, and social peace, you require rules that protect agency. Coercion undermines those conditions and must be continually enforced. If rights are grounded in human nature, then the legitimate function of law is limited to prohibit violence, theft, fraud, coercion. This is classical liberalism, the rule of law protecting equal rights with minimal coercive power, not because of sentiment, but because expanding coercive authority inevitably turns moral questions into political contests over who gets to initiate force for good reasons. The moment exceptions become normal, the method collapses. Good reasons become a synonym for who controls enforcement. Objective morality does not require religious decree or democratic consensus. It requires correct identification of reality and consistent application of a rule that matches it. If an outcome requires the initiation of force against peaceful people, it is wrong. Not conditionally wrong, not culturally wrong, wrong in principle. Nature is not persuaded by ideology. Social systems either align with human agency and remain stable through consent, or they contradict it and require coercion to survive.